Hello, Tanse, et lanete, ani, bonjour. Welcome back to Our Shared Politics. My name is Nova. I am a settler on Turtle Island. I created this podcast to really showcase socialism instead of pursuing the Red Scare blindly, which just pushes people further apart. I wish to express acknowledgement that I am on Treaty 8 territory, home to the Tetskene, Denizah, Nahiawak, Saulteaux, and BC Métis. It is essential I recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, both status and non-status, as the guardians of these lands. As a non-Indigenous person, I play a role as a treaty partner being represented by the government. My pronouns are she, her, but I also accept they, them, and I fall under the 2S LGBTQIA+ umbrella. I say these things at the top of every episode so that you are able to make your decision on how safe of a person I am. If you've been watching the news over the last month or so, you've been seeing the clips popping up all over of Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition, calling the Prime Minister and his policies wacko. Something that seems to be missing from a lot of these articles and posts is the human aspect of these wacko policies. This is not something that should be used as a gotcha in Parliament because these are really real human lives at stake here. What British Columbia has tried to accomplish is frankly amazing, and if it would have been implemented with the amount of support that's needed, it could have been successful. There are basically no treatment centers available the day they're needed, and with drug addiction, you can't expect an addict to be able to wait weeks, months, or years on a wait list for a rehab facility. There's also only roughly 1,500 harm reduction sites, but that includes places like supply safe. But that includes places that supply safe injection supplies and not an actual safe injection facility. So if you go in like my local doctor's office, I go into it and right at the front, there's all these little brown paper bags that say safe inhalation, safe injection, whatever, safe sex even on them. And you can take them and inside there's either like a little pipe or there's needles, clean needles, everything like that. And it gives you a container to dispose your needles inside of when you're done. So those things technically count as a harm reduction site on the website, but that's not like a safe injection facility, or that's not someone that's actually there to make sure that people aren't ODing, or that someone's actually watching to make sure there's safe consumption happening. And the other thing is that these are not easy to find. Like, I looked around quite a bit and there's no just general system to find any sort of these harm reduction sites. You first of all have to go into whatever region you're in. There's not just like a British Columbia wide one. And when you go into the actual BC website, it only gives you for Island Health, Interior Health, Fraser Health, and Vancouver Coastal Health. So there's nothing there for Northern Health, which is where I am. You have to actually go separately and you have to search for Northern drugs. And guess what? In my town of 20,000 or so people, there's no sort of safe consumption site here. I guess we've been trying to get one. And so finally, just earlier this month or last month, we received $75,000 for a safe community situation table to help address public safety concerns. So we're getting provincial funding for a new effort to tackle and reduce public safety issues like mental health, addictions, and poverty. It's going to be a panel of local frontline workers that identifies at-risk people and provides them with help tailored to their specific needs. So basically someone's going to be able to go in, say that they're a drug addict, and they're going to be able to be pointed towards a rehab. But there's no guarantee that that rehab or that facility or anything is going to be available. We already have a lack of beds available. And that's, like, it doesn't help just to have someone sitting at a table steering people towards a rehab when we need more rehabs themselves. The $75,000 feels like it could have been used for something a lot better, like maybe a safe injection site right here in town to at least substantiate some of the issues we've got going on, like some of the overdoses and things that are going on. So yeah, it kind of seems every person in every community wants to feel safe. The instances of violence and vandalism that have emerged in recent years in BC communities, particularly in the Northeast, are very concerning. So basically this table is there to make non-addicts feel better, to make them feel more comfortable. The table will be made up of representatives from agencies like the RCMP, social services, housing providers, mental health and community organizations, and Northern Health. Don't know why the RCMP is involved at all. They have no help that anyone could get. Like, what if someone's going through mental health, addiction, or poverty? What is the RCMP supposed to do for them other than criminalize them and find a reason to put them in jail? The RCMP is not needed for a fucking safety table in the slightest, unless maybe they want to put an RCMP officer just standing by to make sure that nothing goes on. But there's no reason that the RCMP needs to be one of the agencies that's represented at this. Social services, also maybe not great. Mothers who might be dealing with addiction might not want to go in and talk about it because they might be at risk of getting their children taken away. Why do we, like, housing providers? Okay, I don't know of much low-income housing in our community anyways. And most of it is at overflow capacity with long wait lists as well. So I don't know what a housing provider is going to do when we don't think it's important to build affordable housing or government subsidized housing or anything, because we are all a bunch of NIMBYs in this town. Mental health, that's good. It'd be great to get therapists or someone who can at least help with mental health crises. And community organizations, which I'm assuming that might be like the Sagatawa Friendship Center, things like that. That'd be cool to see going into something like this. Some sort of actual Indigenous representation. And then Northern Health, which, yeah, that's great. Northern Health should definitely be there. And it's just, I don't know. It just seems like this is a Band-Aid that's really not going to fix anything at all in the slightest. I don't see what the fuck this is even supposed to do. And so that, I guess we've been asking for money for some sort of help for quite a while, and there's been nothing coming, basically. And back to the comment itself about from Pierre Poilievre, I think it's really interesting that many times, many other parties have said things that are unparliamentary in the House of Commons or during question period, during whatever. The leader of the opposition, the Speaker of the House calls him out on it, and they retract, apologize, sit back down. They go about their business, like adults. Pierre Poilievre, however, literally just refused to retract his statement. He tried to replace the word 3 or 4 times before the Speaker finally just fucking tossed his ass out. And then, like happens with a dictator or with an army that is weirdly loyal to its leader and can't think for themselves, the whole rest of the Conservatives got up and left. And I guess they immediately went out to a swarm of reporters and journalists and stuff and immediately started on a campaign of like propaganda. So you can't tell me that that wasn't scripted and that wasn't planned and everything. And I guess Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister, she made some sort of comment about Pierre Poilievre wearing more makeup than her. And she was like, the leader of the opposition's wearing more makeup than I am today. And everyone's like cheering, clapping, whatever. And Speaker of the House right away stood up. No, we're not making comments about people's appearances. Take it back, basically. And she stood up right away and said, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I retract that statement. She sat down. Like someone should. I don't know. I think just that alone just proves to me and should prove to everyone that Pierre Poilievre is not cut out to be like the leader of any sort of country, any sort of anything. He shouldn't even be the leader of the party in Canada. If he was my manager, I couldn't imagine the kind of shit that he would expect out of his employees. So another thing I want to bring up today is I'll bring that up in my next one. So where are we going with this? And so now, because of all this peer pressure and all of these media campaigns against British Columbia and David Eby and the amount of overdoses that are going on in the province, they're now backtracking on their fucking pioneering of a study or of decriminalization. We had never seen this done in any sort of place anywhere in Canada. It's done well in other places, but yeah, so it was just be a 3-year-long project to decriminalize drugs like small quantities or personal possession quantities of all narcotics, basically, in British Columbia for 3 years. It's been 15 months since that was enacted, and they're pulling back on it now. But it's not like in these last 15 months, we've been seeing fucking safe injection or safe consumption sites pop up everywhere. Like I said, there's still not one in my community. We haven't been seeing a whole bunch of rehabs being built or a whole bunch of aid going towards bringing in different rehab workers or different addictions and crisis counselors and things like that. So really, we fucking decriminalized drugs for 15 months, didn't fucking put in any extra supports to help someone, made it legal to consume them everywhere, which I don't agree with. It shouldn't have been allowed outside of parks and different places because I think it should have been handled like marijuana. I can't go within a school. I can't go within certain public spaces and things like that and smoke pot if I want to. You shouldn't be allowed to do it. It's just like alcohol. Like you can't just walk down the street consuming alcohol. So it should have been basically done the same exact way like that, but with narcotics. And I think shit could have been handled a lot differently, but instead, all these overdoses have been happening even worse. Nobody has been allowed to be criminalized, which I don't agree with anyways, but these police have been basically feeling like they don't have any, which that goes a lot to say. The RCMP feel like they don't have any other way to help someone, basically, other than to throw them in jail. Which again, why are the RCMP then at some sort of safe table for like addictions and mental health and stuff like that? But I digress. And I think it's just, I think David Eby just kind of got real spineless there at the end. Because when you look at Alberta's statistics versus BC statistics, Alberta's got basically the fucking same amount of ODs per capita and everything that we do here. And they don't have the same kind of safe consumption sites like all over their main cities and things like that. They didn't decriminalize. They don't do anything extra or special to really help people in addictions. And they've still got the same amount of ODs. So obviously, that's not working either, to just keep criminalizing people and to just keep pushing them further and further into poverty and further into desperation. Because giving someone a criminal record is not going to help anyone. Basically, in the situation, you're setting that person up to get out of their time in prison to go right back to doing whatever they were doing with no chance in hell of finding another good paying job. So I don't know what you expect people to do when you just constantly criminalize them over and over and over again and give them a longer and longer rap sheet. And yes, we can get into the whole, well, they chose to do drugs, etc., etc. I don't care. That is such a disingenuous argument to me at this point in the year of 2024. If you are still trying to argue that drug addicts are bad people because they chose to do drugs for the first time, you need to fucking get into this century, buddy. Because starting in the 90s, doctors started getting people addicted. So that's just not an argument that I care to fucking even give the time of day for anymore, honestly. You're not a bad person because you attempted drugs for the first time. You're not. You're never going to convince me that a drug addict is a bad person simply because they use drugs. They might do other things. Even then, it's going to take a lot for me to be convinced they're a bad person. It's going to have to take them bodily harming another person for me to believe that. Because a lot of things are a symptom of drug addiction. And that's another thing actually just reminded me, I just reminded myself, that what the hell is her name? The conservative, deputy, conservative deputy, would that be her title? The woman, oh God, what is her name? Melissa Lantsman. So Melissa Lantsman made some sort of comment about how she apparently had been addicted at one point or something. This was just, the way she said it was like, when I needed help and treatment, I needed to be able to get help and treatment. I didn't need the substances to be decriminalized so I could use them more. I needed treatment, so I got treatment. And I'd like to just say, nice. Glad you had the privilege to go and get treatment when you needed treatment. Because a lot of people, that's not possible for them. Sure, there are rehabs that always have a bed available because they cost so much that only certain people are able to get into them. I understand that. I've seen that personally, where people are able to literally call up a rehab and 2 days later they're in the fucking rehab. But that's not an everyday man's way of going about things. So it really just fucking pinpoints her goddamn privilege when she's able to say, well, I needed treatment, so guess what? I went and got treatment. Nice. Have you not heard of the thousands of Canadian stories of talking about how they woke up one day and finally realized, I don't want to do this life anymore? And they were told they can't get help for months. Because that is the normal Canadian's fucking life when they're addicted. Not Mrs. Deputy Conservative Party Melissa Lantsman, where she needed help, so she went and got help immediately. It must be nice to not have ever been worried about being criminalized, because you either had the wealth to know that you'd have a good lawyer, or you had the wealth to be able to go in to get treatment and rehab when you needed it. Most people don't have that privilege. Most people, when they're caught by the RCMP using even their own personal possession, they're criminalized. I think we just need to remember that, drug addicts are people too. Drug addicts are someone's mother, father, daughter, son, grandpa, grandma, cousins, uncles, aunts, and even if they're not, even if they're all their family in the world, they're the only one left, they're still a fucking human being, deserving of a hell of a lot more than we've been offering them. And what I really find interesting with the fact that the Conservative Party is so kind of against, I know they've been saying we're going to treat people. I don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. The Conservative Party doesn't care about treating drug addicts. And I find it funny that they don't, because every single one of those drug addicts is a taxpayer. So you'd think that the Conservatives, at the very least, would want to get all those people off drugs so they could be part of the economy and could be contributing more to taxes and everything. But their hatred for anything that they deem as subhuman, I say in air quotes, it just overtakes even the most capitalistic of their fucking endeavors and their mentalities and everything. Something that's really been on, I can't believe that he just wouldn't back down and just tried to basically have a pissing match with the fucking Speaker of the House. I don't want that as my Prime Minister. That's a child. I do not want a child as my Prime Minister. I saw what a child does to a country down in the USA, and I don't want a fucking child being a part or being the leader of my country up here. I think he's dangerous. And I think the fact that more people don't think that or are willing to excuse things as rhetoric is even more dangerous. So I guess we'll see what happens. As always, thank you for joining me today. I drop a new episode every Monday morning at midnight-ish, kind of. The last couple weeks have been weird. So check back in next week to see what I'll be sharing with you then. So-called Canada is in a fentanyl and mental health crisis right now. Please consider picking up a free naloxone kit at your local pharmacy and do not use alone. For any Indigenous listeners out there, the Hope for Wellness Helpline offers immediate culturally aware and trauma-informed help to all Indigenous people across Canada. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in English and French to offer immediate support and crisis intervention. While there are supports in Cree, Ojibwe, and Inuktitut, those are not available 24/7, so you may need to call in to find out the next time that a language speaker will be available. You can call the toll-free helpline at 1-855-242-3310 or connect to the online chat at www.hopeforwellness.ca. And there's also the Thunderbird Wellness app that provides access to Indigenous perspectives on health and wellness, including substance abuse and mental health. Now, not that Indigenous people can't use these next resources, but they do not advertise as culturally aware or trauma-informed. So for everyone else, if you must use alone, please keep in mind you can call 1-888-688-6677 to contact the National Overdose Response Services to access support while using and especially using alone. And there is the Brave app with a use alone timer that connects a paramedic with your location if you don't respond. For mental health support, you can contact 988 to get connected to a crisis responder. If you've learned something new today, it'd be awesome if you'd click that button and follow along for next time. Or if you'd like to contact me with feedback, you can email me at oursharedpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.